Firstly, could you please just give us a little introduction of yourself, your name,
Yeah,
etc.?
of course. Thank you for having me. My name is Maisie Soetantyo. I am the founder of a nonprofit in San Francisco Bay Area, Autism Career Pathways. Professionally, I'm a long-term autism specialist, family coach for almost 30 years. So I started right after actually, I started as an undergraduate at UCLA working with autistic kids and then just continued ever since. So it's been a long time and I love it. Personally, I am a late diagnosed autistic woman and mom of a neurodivergent as well. So for me, it's come full circle of why I'm here doing this. I think I have a good understanding of all of it now. So that's what I do. I'm an autistic advocate. I continue to work with autistic and neurodivergent people of all kinds, of all ages, and I basically connect people for employability purposes, just to network, to learn from each other. Um, yeah, so I think that's in a nutshell, that's what I do and where I came from.
Mhm. And how did you get to where you are now?
How did I get to? 30 years ago, I thought that I wanted to work with kids. And I learned that, I couldn't handle working as a teacher
Mm.
in a special education classroom. It was just too much for me.
Right.
So I came across a classroom serving autistic children, and most of those kids had ABA programs, applied behavioral analysis programs. So this was at UCLA, and that's how I learned about behavioral programs, and that's how I got started in this field. Today, there are many autistic advocates who are really against behavioral methods. And I totally understand that because I left the field after 12 plus years because I think I just knew instinctively that something was not right when you design programs with a main purpose to change the very essence of who that person is. It's never going to be right. Because autistic people, including myself, our minds are built differently, and it is very much part of our identity. So I left a behavioral intervention approach and I got certified in relationship development intervention. And that it's very different than ABA. That is relationship-based, family-based. And since then, that was about 20 years ago, I um, only worked with parents at home. And then last year in 2019, I started the nonprofit because many of my clients are young adults and they're very capable. Some of them have degrees, some of them are in universities, but they can't really even get a summer job to do something that they're really good at. So that really made me sad, of course, because I've known them since they were little and worked really hard alongside the families. And here we are today. And after learning about neurodivergent employability, the culture of it, what's going on, the funding, basically my conclusion was that the world's not ready for neurodivergent people. There's just really a disconnect. And that's why with Autism Career Pathways, our mission is to figure out the how-tos to close that gap. And the how-tos meaning we want to create a robust video library to educate small to medium-sized businesses on how to screen autistic neurodivergent people and support them and really help that person to grow within the company culture. So that's the mission of Autism Career Pathways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting how you talk about
Mm-hmm.
this kind of disconnect in society, I
It's a
guess.
disconnect
Mm,
because everything that is available when it comes to information given to parents of newly diagnosed kids, and how professionals are being trained, teachers being trained, all based on the behavioral model. Whenever we talk about the behavioral model, it's based on it's a deficit model. It's
right.
not person-centered, it's not strength-based, it's not growth mindset-based. And, you know, when you own a company, any size company, and you think about, well, what kind of person that I want to hire for my company, you want to look for the 21st century employability skill list. You know, you want to hire somebody who can communicate, who can like problem solve, who can think outside of the box, you know, who, yeah, so all these qualities that I think neurodivergent people, do we have those abilities? Absolutely, but the way we do it, it's different than
Mm,
how neurotypicals do it, you know, so that's where I think it's like comparing apples and oranges. We're all human beings, and there are many people who are really well intentioned. Lots of companies here in Silicon Valley, where I am, they're really trying to be pioneers in hiring neurodivergent people, but there is still a lot of work to be done, especially for neurodivergent population who are needing higher level of support, people who are minimally verbal, people who are just needing higher level of support, complex support.
mm. I think before we continue, it'd be
Mm-hmm.
good to ask you to just, how would you define autism as well as what is it like to have? I think that currently a big issue
Mm-hmm.
is that not a lot
Yeah.
of people have that much awareness on this. Yeah.
Yeah. So here in America, the DSM-5, which is kind of like the medical dictionary for all kinds of diagnoses ever
Yeah.
invented, you know. So if you look up autism, it's the one thing that is not included in that definition is our sensory differences. So if you compare, of course, every autistic person is unique,
Mm,
personality wise, like everything about each one of us, it's very unique, but the one common thing across is the sensory differences. So the sensory, every human being has a sensory profile like all of us, but I think for autistic people it's just calibrated differently, you know. So like for example, my own sensory profile, I am both sensory defensive, meaning that I don't like tags on my clothing. You know, I'm very particular with the clothes that I wear. I would buy the same color for one item because it's rare that I can find clothing that I feel comfortable with, if that makes sense, you know,
mm,
because I am sensory, I'm tactile defensive, you know. But and also another example will be noise. Certain things would startle me. um, that means in a crowded situation, you know, I can't handle long periods of that because it's just a noise. And then when you have holiday gatherings, there's lots of noise, like pots and pans banging, you know, it's a lot for me, you know.
mm,
And yeah, so autistic people can have like hypersensitivity and also the opposite of that, you know. So some people, even though they're able to speak, for example, they can do a lot of things, but they cannot leave their home because the noise from outside world, like dog barking, cars honking, you know, it really hurts their ears, for
Mm.
example, right? So those are some examples of sensory differences. You know, it's part of all of most autistic people. And it really affects our lifestyle, the way we make decisions, the way we choose when and how to socialize, the way we make decisions, the way we choose our career path, you know, the way we function best in certain work environments, you know. So the sensory differences really is a very strong and consistent presence in all autistic people, you know, whether the so-called like high functioning or low functioning. And we don't like to use functioning labels because, you know, like I said, you could appear to be very high functioning, but you still struggle with so many things. And autistic people, we often have co-occurring conditions, so other conditions that needs to be addressed separately. You know, sensory processing disorder and depression. I have central auditory processing disorder. So like I can't multi-process. I can only pay attention to one thing at a time, you know. Dyslexia, apraxia, you know, all these different things that are commonly associated with having autism. You know, it's not part of it, but it's commonly associated, right? So yeah, so that's why every one of us is unique. And yeah, so the sensory differences is one. It should be defined as part of autism. And the communication differences is the second one. So if an autistic person is with other autistic people, we actually don't have an issue communicating because we could do it through texting, through emails, through voice recording. I have lots of connections on social media where, you know, we just communicate that way and we feel very comfortable. But then the miscommunication often happens when neurotypicals and neurodivergents try to communicate. It's not that the intention is not there, but we're often not on the same wavelength, even though we want to connect with each other. It's like when you go to a different country and you don't speak the language, it's like that. You know, that if that makes sense, that's a
Yeah,
good
that makes
way to
sense.
think about it. So autism is a neurotype, it's a culture. So that's how I would like everyone to think about it. It's not that our mind is built in a lesser way, it's just different, you know. And
Yeah.
Autism Career Pathways, we really want to show people the similarities and differences and how we can translate each other better.
Mm.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense? Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. That's actually
Yeah.
really, really informative. Thank you.
Yeah. Good.
Moving back to what we were talking about earlier, as well
Mm-hmm.
as what you said just about autism career pathways. Let's talk a bit about what you guys do to help people with
Mm-hmm.
autism, especially in regards to employment rates.
So we are trying to really help people who cannot pass standard verbal interviews. So I
Mm.
think today, because of COVID-19, especially, you know, businesses and companies are definitely trying to be more creative. So you hear more about like Zoom interviews or video resumes and so on. But the population that we really want to help tap into is people who are actually have different types of talent. So people who are artistic, people who are really good visual artists, performers, really people, authors, all these types of talents that, I mean, they still struggle with getting a job and maintaining a job because there's no clear self-disclosure process. So again, there's lots of support. Some people need support if they're expected to work, in the office or, outside of their home and 9 to 5 kind of schedule, because we do experience sensory burnout and it accumulates. And when there's pressure at work, deadlines and things like that, it just, and also getting instructions to complete projects and all in collaborating with other people, where there are a lot of, we just need time to process, because autistic people process information differently. So without a clear disclosure process both ways, where, if I'm autistic and I have a project to do, I'm allowed to say, in order for me to do this, complete this project the best way, I'm going to need like time to do it. I'm going to need like emails to just to understand more, those kind of things, and also for the supervisor or the company owner to be able to say, I know that you have ADHD. Is there anything that we could do to support you? So both sides to be proactive, right? So somebody with ADHD tends to be all over the place, and we easily get sidetracked. And then a business owner might think that we're just lazy or inattentive and can never finish what's required of us, and that's not really the case. It's just our mind works really, really fast, and we have a hard time directing our attention where we should direct our attention to what's the most important thing to focus on right now, so I think gosh, I forgot, what was your question again?
No worries.
Yeah, it's going down the
Don't worry
rabbit hole.
about it.
This
This
is
is going really
exactly what I
good.
was talking about. So we were talking about, okay, so how is ACP going to help to make a difference? That was the question.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what we did last year, what I did, I created an all activity-based career assessment tool. It's all
Yeah.
activity based, and it's designed to generate a video resume for each candidate that can show what this person's personality is like, what the person's really good at, interests, aptitudes, current skills, and also areas of needs. So we're looking at how people self-regulate, how they're able to calm down enough to be able to get ready to learn. We're looking at how people put things together, follow instructions, like complete an assignment, problem solve, as well as the way people experience share communication wise. And it's all videotape, and the video resume is an edited and caption video for each candidate. So my hope is by sharing this video resume, I can also educate businesses that accommodation, this is how it looks like. It's actually not that big of a deal. It's just a quiet environment. Don't hover over people. Make sure that you ask them, do you need visual, you need photos, or do you need written instructions, how much time you need. It should be a universal design, because I think everyone can be more successful if both sides are being proactive to really invest in how can we help each other so that we can be productive together, so I think that
Right.
answer your question this time. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. That sounds that's
Mhm.
actually really interesting. Could you talk to me a little bit more about the process that takes?
Of the assessment,
Yeah.
uh, the career assessment protocol. Yeah, so it's people would come to us, and the assessment takes about an hour or so. We created different modules. So the first module is for people who are minimally to moderately uh, verbally communicative, and the second module is longer because it's to really look at how people prefer to use communication methods. And also my goal is to educate people. Just because like this candidate doesn't use eye contact, it doesn't mean the candidate doesn't want to get to know you. You know, eye contact is a big one. Usually autistic people get dinged for lack of eye contact, or it seems like you're talking to me but you're facing the other way, you know. But it doesn't matter actually. Like an example of like being in a different culture in Japan, eye contact is not used as much as in if you were in a Western country. You
Yeah.
know, especially when you're talking, when you're in a work environment, you're talking to your superior, you shouldn't use eye contact. You know, so these are like, I think something that everyone should be aware of, because we all have our personal biases. And um, when we're dealing with somebody who act differently, you know,
Mm.
and who
Yeah.
can't really say, I am really good. I'm a pizza maker expert. You know, I made this kind of pizza, that kind of pizza, you know, thin crust pizza, I know how to do all that, you know, because autistic people don't like to, like, they don't know how to embellish, you know,
Mm.
and job interviews are exactly that. You read what the interviewer, you have a sense of how you should be performing, and you sell yourself. And autistic people are not really good at selling themselves like that, you know. So that's a true story. That I had a client who couldn't get a summer job at Domino's, even though he loves eating pizza and he makes pizza very often, and that was devastating.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it can be really tough actually. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You know, going through looking for a job, it's hard for everyone to begin with,
Right.
you know,
Mm.
but it's even harder, I think, for neurodivergent population, because you come into the picture already feeling like I it's I'm not as good as everyone else.
Yeah.
That's that little voice, you know.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Um, well, I can probably answer this question already now, to be honest. But what are
okay.
but
Hmm.
what are some things that other people or companies, schools, I guess
Hmm.
just people in general,
Hmm.
that you think they can do better in order to help people who are neurodivergent or with autism?
Yeah. Well, I think to summarize is that number one, you leave your personal biases at home.
Mm,
I think especially in Asian country,
right.
like especially if you're a girl, you know, I hope it's changing today. It's different, but I grew up with gender expectations, because
Mm,
I was a girl, and I wasn't pushed to do certain things because I was a girl. And it was actually good to be quiet and reserved. Uh, and I was actually able to hide uh, behind people who could do the talking for me. So my struggle was not very apparent to other people or to me, because
mm,
I just wasn't expected. If you're a girl, you should be quiet and reserved. and not very athletic, and you don't have to do all those things that boys should be able to do, you know, and that goes on, including career choices, you know, the subjects you take at school, you know, it's just all based on cultural and gender expectations. So I think that's why a lot of autistic girls and women, they are very late diagnosed or not diagnosed at all, because professionals don't know how to diagnose, you know, autistic women. Yeah, so number one would be, it's the same if you are interacting with a young autistic person, teen or young adults. It's the same across all ages. You know, whatever your intention is, like you have to leave your personal biases at home. You know, what you know about autism, what you know about ADHD, nonverbal learning disorder, all these things, you know. So what you read about the person on paper, you need to like put it aside. Better don't even read the paperwork, because I think everyone deserves a chance to do the best that they can, you know. And I think secondly, you know, do more to make that person feel comfortable, you know. So during the assessment, I have like a box of fidgets that is accessible to them. And don't rush, because when you're rushing people, that it's very hard, you know, when you come into the situation already feeling like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, you know. So you want to actually ask yourself, as the guide in the moment, as whether you're a teacher or you're a psychologist or an employment specialist, or maybe you're a supervisor at work, you know, don't put it on that person to perform for you. What are you doing as the person more experienced, and you are in the position to make this important decision? That what are you doing yourself to make sure this person in front of you can be as successful as possible in his or her or their own ways, you know? So I would say if you just do those two things, I think you can have a different picture of this person, right? So,
Yeah.
and also you don't have to make such a quick decision. You know, you've heard about like interviewers know whether they want to hire you or not within three minutes, you know, because it's like how you carry yourself, you know.
Right. Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah, exactly. But if you need more time to make your decision, to get to know the person, I think it's just take your time and don't rush into judging like, oh, this person's out, you know, this and that, you know. And just always presume competence. I guess that's number three,
Yeah.
because competence can look very differently for neurodivergent people. Um, and I think everyone should not hire anyone based on just the talk, because anyone can talk. But the test comes when, you know, can you actually do the work? So neurodivergent people, given time, they can show you brilliantly how they can do the job much better than anyone in the company, you know, if you just again leave those personal biases at home. You know, so that's what I
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or mention before we wrap up?
That's a good question. I think at this point, maybe after COVID-19, I would really love to have the opportunity to like mentor businesses or anyone, like any mentors in companies, if anyone want to learn more about neurodiversity paradigm. I can put together an online like presentation all delivered by neurodivergent people, so that like companies can really learn the how-tos better. I think that would be great if both sides can be honest and not be afraid of like asking questions. That will be a better start moving forward, because we have a lot of neurodivergent kids. They're going to grow up. We have a lot of adults also who are they can't get a job, you know. So I think if we work together, I think the future would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being able to do this interview, Maisie.
You're
It was really
welcome.
interesting. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And, you know, if anyone has any question, our website is autismcareerpathways.com. On Instagram is at ASD Career Pathways, and my parent coaching is just my name at Maisie Soetantyo.